Hello guys, welcome to this lesson on the 25 cognitive biases, psychological heuristics and personality typing. What we're going to be doing in this lesson is giving you a quick overview of some of the heuristics and biases you may have heard of within psychology, and we'll then be going through some websites. We'll be looking at Apple's website and Amazon's website through the framework of these 25 cognitive biases, and we'll be showing you how you can apply these biases to your website to increase the amount of people making the decision to buy from you and ultimately increasing your revenue and sales. So I first heard about the cognitive biases through Tai Lopez and his 67 Steps program. However, there are plenty of books on the subject. One great one is by Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow. He's actually a Nobel Prize winner. Another one which is used within psychology in academic settings is Influence by Cialdini, The Psychology of Persuasion. There's also a newer book called Predictable Irrationality and The Art of Thinking Clearly. So I'd highly recommend taking a look at those resources. There's also a great website called the25cognitivebiases.com you can take a look at as well. So I'll just start by explaining exactly what these biases are using a quote from this book, Thinking Fast and Slow. So, we generally make decisions based around 25 cognitive biases, heuristics, and tendencies that lie within the brain. We use a binary decision-making tree, whereas the cognitive biases, heuristics, and tendencies take less mental energy than deliberate, conscious, reasoned, logical thinking. Biases take place in the reptilian brain, and because of efficiency, we evolved not to engage the logical system of the brain unless we have to. Most of the time, we operate our decisions making based on heuristics and replace hard questions with easier ones that we can then use the biases on. Often we use heuristics or cognitive biases to make decisions or judgments, and then we use the logical system of the brain to consciously come up and invent reasons to justify our decisions. So what these biases are effectively triggers in the brain that affect people to take a certain behaviour. There's also a great book by Charlie Munger called Poor Charlie's Almanac, where he goes into these biases in great detail. So I'm going to first list off a few you may have actually heard of. So the first one is the halo effect, and this is basically that good looks imply that people are more moral, competent and trustworthy. The second is similarity. So similarity implies deserving of a favour. So similar looking or acting people elicit compliance. So we basically like people who are like us. The next is repetition. So repetition is interpreted as truth. This is also to do with the availability bias in the brain. Basically, the easier things are to bring to the mind, the more we think they are probably true. The next is labeling. And this may sound all very conceptual, but I just want to give you an example of how kind of powerful these biases actually are. Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett say they never actually go to an auction, and the reason for that is because an auction is a fantastic analogy of or a way to show the cognitive biases. So when you first go into an auction, you see somebody on stage. That's known as the authority bias. You've then got the thing where they go going, going, gone. That's known as scarcity. You've then got social proof. There's a whole room of people who are all wanting or looking at the same thing on the stage. Now, Charlie Munger says in his book that one of these biases alone isn't enough to affect behaviour. But when you get 3, 4, 5, 6 of these biases or triggers acting on the brain at the same time, people are kind of almost helpless to buy. And Warren Buffett never go to an auction is because they know that this is happening. So I'm just going to list out a few of them, and then we'll look at Apple and Amazon's websites and we'll analyse them and show you how you can apply what they're doing with the framework of these cognitive biases to your website to increase your sales. So we've got reward and punishment. We've got liking bias, doubt avoidance bias, inconsistency avoidance tendency, congruency bias, curiosity bias, reciprocation tendency or reciprocation, Kantian fairness, association bias, pain-avoiding psychological denial, over-optimism, excessive self-regard, scarcity, deprival superreaction tendency, social proof, contrast bias, stress misinfluence tendency, misweighting bias, authority bias, twaddle tendency, reason respecting bias, and the most powerful of them all, the Lollapalooza effect. Now again, all of these biases are on this website and in the books I mentioned, and also on this website there's a couple of talks by Charlie Munger himself talking about the psychology of human misjudgment and these biases in action. With the cognitive biases, they have an effect also on different personality types. So you may have heard of psychometrics or personality typing, and again, Ty Lopez has a good course on this. And I'm going to use his framework to explain this. So he says there are four main personality types: practical, action, social, and emotional. And these obviously split into 16 different types, but we're going to stick with the main four. So what you want to do is identify what the majority of your audience, what psychometric personality type they might be. Now, this is harder to do on a website, and you'll see websites like Apple and Amazon modulating between different personality types within their pages. And that's effectively what you would like to do as well. There's that famous quote in The Art of War that says, if you know yourself but you don't know your enemy, for every battle you win, you will lose one. But if you know yourself and your enemy, you'll never need to be afraid. So effectively, we want to find out what our audience are and tailor our marketing messages to that. So first of all, practical. So practical people are kind of like frugal, patient planners. You can think of them like engineers. They like numbers and formality. It obviously takes them a while. They're stubborn. It takes them a while to change. So they like really long sales pages. They like logic and reason over emotion. If you're speaking in person with somebody, they'd like you to speak a bit slower, point by point. They'd like you to give them a bit of time to make a logical decision. They like statistics and facts. They're very analytical. They're not open to uncertainty. So one of the biases comes in there, the doubt avoidance bias. So what Amazon will sometimes do is saying, oh, we've only got 6 left in stock, but don't worry, we can get more if you need them. Doubt avoidance bias is also to do with certainty. So practical people and emotional people like certainty. Now, action people are usually a bit more aggressive. They're very energetic, impatient, and driven by reward. They're kind of like extreme sports and adrenaline and going to the gym. They're usually spontaneous and quick to try new things. They're like adventure. They're a bit more fearless and risk tolerant. They're fast-paced, a bit more blunt. You can be a bit more blunt with them. So you want to use things like scarcity and be big on reward and personalize the reward to them. Focus on what they're going to get. And you can also use things like, if you're talking in person, it would be like, this begins today, you don't have to wait. As soon as you sign up for this program, you're going to start seeing results effectively. Now, social people are kind of like the social butterfly. They're kind of silly, scatty, light-hearted. They like talking, joking around, and they really just usually want to know if you're a good person effectively and if they like you. So you can use the likability bias, and a bit of a tip there. Likability, people like people who are willing to do things for others, not just themselves. So you could say things like, we were willing to go the extra mile. I don't just do this business just because of money. We do this because we care about people and we care about you. And obviously social proof is extremely important with the social personality type. You want to give examples and testimonials of people who've used your products in the past, maybe even stories or video testimonials and reviews. You can see Amazon doing this really, really well up the top here. Finally, there's the emotional personality type. So they're usually quite nervous, non-aggressive. They're kind of sensitive to other people's feelings and the environment around them. A good way, they're kind of investigative, and a good way to know if you are an emotional personality type is if you kind of pick up on things without any words being spoken. Fairly quiet and passive, can come across as kind of mysterious and intense. So what you want to do is craft your message around an emotional appeal. if you do have an emotional person. So you want to include things like images, stories, pictures, things like how will it feel. You'd future pace the reward in terms of how they will actually feel to get the end result or the product. And with these personality types, there's thesis and antithesis. So practical is the antithesis of social, and emotional is the opposite, sorry, or antithesis to action. So let's just run through here and point out the biases happening on this page. As we mentioned, we've got contrast bias here. We've got association bias. Here, obviously, the book is by Charlie Munger, it's a celebrity. The association bias going there. There's reward, we want it. They're using the practical, but they're saying using statistics and facts. They've got emotional, they've got pictures, they've got social, they've got reviews here as well. Okay, so let's look at how Apple, first off, are modulating for different personality types. So we can see there's a lot of images, which does kind of go along with the overall brand story of Apple. They would kind of be classed as an E personality type brand. But there's also images we can see here. There are also slight modulation for the social personality type. Action, there's lots of bright colours as well popping up. And we can see for the practical personality type, there isn't as much on this page. So if we start to click through, we'll start to see other cognitive biases and other personality types being modulated. But you can see how you could apply this to your website. So if you did a kind of overall of the customers visiting your site, so you could even use non-explicit polling tools like Google Analytics. There's things like KISS metrics you can put on your website. There's heat-seeking eye maps and things like that will show you where most people were clicking. But there's lots of things that allow you to analyze the demographic of the audience that are visiting your site. And what you could do is use the Pareto principle, take the 20% or that are giving you the most results and build your business around those. But you can see how different websites do also modulate for all of these different personalities. So everybody kind of has a bit of each personality type, but most people can be classed with having one dominant energy and one weak energy. So let's start to look at some cognitive biases on different websites. So we've got here, this website here is a dog website. They've got social proof popping up. So that's a simple thing you could add to your Shopify store straight away. It's a simple pop-up that shows the social proof of people buying. They've got free, that's the reciprocity bias popping up. They've got reviews, so they're modulating for the social people and they're using social proof. There's availability bias. It's fairly simple and easy to see everything. Obviously there could be some improvements to the design here with the colours. See, there's also scarcity. They're saying there's only 2 left. One thing they're missing is the contrast bias, so they could put the recommended retail price crossed out and a slight discount on the product to add the contrast bias. And remember what Charlie Munger said, one of these biases alone is not enough to affect behaviour, but once you get 2, 3, 4, 5 of these biases acting as triggers on the brain, it dramatically increases the amount of people that are actually going to buy. So in terms of using reciprocity and the Kantian fairness bias, what you want to do is give information that helps people make decisions without any commitment in return. So a really common thing you'll see is offer a reward in exchange for an email address. But they're doing it obviously in terms of shipping. You can see products being used free plus shipping. So get this product for free, just pay shipping. That's a form of using reciprocity. A good ratio to stick to is 3 to 1. So give away three things for free for every ask. In fact, if you can give away 10, that's even better. Just a quote here. in one of those books. So it says, in the context of obligation, people say yes to those they owe. Reciprocity can trump the effects of the liking bias through feelings of guilt and indebtedness. If you ever heard of Hare Krishnas, the famous cult, they used to give out flowers and then they would get another person from their cult down the street to ask for donations. So that's another example of using reciprocity. That's actually in more detail in Cialdini's book, Influence. Now, they could also add the association bias by simply adding a few quotes from, say, famous people. There's a famous book by a guy called Oren Clough called Pitch Anything, where he talks about status, and the number one, a good idea to increase association bias is to increase the celebrity status or the perceived celebrity value of your business. So that could be as simple as using influencer marketing to show products of people and famous people using your products, or you could just simply use quotes from books or famous sayings within your industry. The most famous example of association bias is McDonald's using athletes to promote their food. So let's talk a bit more about scarcity, what these guys could actually do. So people obviously like things that are available in a limited quantity for a limited time. Let's say there's only a few spots remaining, and there's a tendency in our brain to be more sensitive to possible losses than possible gains. So what we want to try and do is present your marketing message more persuasively by focusing on what they stand to lose if they don't buy. So other things they could add is things like the over-optimism bias or the excessive self-regard tendency. So basically, there's a famous quote, man mostly appraises himself on the high side, and the lottery plays with man's fascination of self-picked numbers. So again, ethics here, but what you could do is simply say things like, you deserve to be happy, you're amazing, we want to bring this out by using our product. You'll see that being used in, I think it's L'Oreal, where they say you're worth it. It's a famous example, but you can include simple things like this within your website, within the copy of your website, to increase conversions. And you may be saying, well, that's just too obvious. Well, it's not, because actually these biases work on the subconscious, the reptilian brain. So even if you do say things blatantly, it will still register on the reptilian brain as a good thing. Another bias to mention is the twaddle tendency. So whenever you're creating kind of sales videos or copy on your website, say the description, as well as using the availability bias, for example, making things as clear as possible, you also want to use the twaddle tendency. So you also want to include as much content as possible as about what you're talking about. And also that's good for the social personality type as well as the practical personality type. So what I'd suggest you do is look at market leaders in the industry, especially for online shopping. Look at people like Amazon and see what they're doing on their cart pages, see how they're promoting products, what words they're using, and see if you can pick out the cognitive biases. It's just a case of, again, looking at this website and the books I recommended and the videos within this website as well, and you'll be able to kind of understand the frameworks of these biases and then begin to be able to use them to increase the conversions, the amount of sales, and people making a decision to actually buy from you. Now, if you have any questions about this, just tag me in our private members Facebook group, and I'll be able to answer from there. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a great day.